Now Pedersen to blast all that hit. Diving save. Hart as he flashes across. Briere sends up Carl. Side of the net. Deflected. Score! Briere moving in. Stop. Cuts to the middle. Still has it. Shot! Score! Here's Hughes giving it across. Oh, what a save! Save by Maher! He's an angle. Short-handed mid. He scores! Up top, cruising is Provorov. He scores! Ivan Provorov!
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Fired Up podcast. For a long time, we've been on a major hiatus for a month. We are live streaming on the Painted Line TTB Sports and Flyers fan made in '93, and I'm your host Amedeo and Grassia, along with my partner Chris Maher. We have Tyson Quiba from the Painted Line for the first time in a little bit. And for people that, don't tune into the live stream on time, you get here late, it's always going to be on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast at. And it's been a while just because we do this thing on StreamYard when we live stream, and I was very confused because StreamYard changed the layout of everything, and I got super confused where to find our intro video. And then as I'm watching the intro video, I'm just like, yeah, we're definitely going to have to change that because, Voracek's not here, and there's some Voracek highlights in that intro. So, yeah, that proves it's been a while. It's been a whole month since we did a podcast. But, how's everyone doing? How we doing today?
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. Tyson, I don't even remember the last time we had you on here. I think it's been that long. I think it was the draft, maybe? Something like that?
Yeah, I think just before that. It's been a minute too, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, it's been a while. I mean, there hasn't been much to talk about. We've had some things trickle in the last handful of days with the Flyers, but yeah, hope you guys are doing good and excited to get back at it.
Exactly. And I saw, Chris, you started Temple recently, so congratulations to that.
I did, yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
it's so weird starting school in August.
Yeah,
thing.
It's always weird to start off, but yeah, I'll say good luck to you. I am a graduate of Temple University, so you'll have a good time there. I'll guarantee that. And I see, Tyson, you have a Seattle Kraken jersey. Since you're over there on the West Coast, are you transitioning into a Seattle fan, or are you still you're still suffering with the Maple Leafs?
I'm still suffering. Yeah, I'm actually holding out. I live in Portland, Oregon, hoping that maybe this Arizona arena deal falls through, that they jump over here because we have a full NHL ready arena already that they already put ice in for the WHL Winterhawks. So I'm always kind of keeping my eyes and ears open for that. There's been rumors in the past. I'm like, come on, guys. So that happened maybe, but no, for now it's still the Leafs.
And I feel bad for you. I feel bad for you. It's a major shame just because, Toronto Maple Leafs and everything like that. But we're not going to bash the Leafs today. We got.
I mean, I don't care if we do. We got worse this offseason.
Oh man, that's some good quality content. And we got Ed in the comment section saying, "What's up, everyone? Been a while." Yeah, it's definitely been a while. A whole goddamn month since I think the last time I saw it was like July. I think it was like right on the brink of free agency was the last time we did a podcast, and that was like when the Flyers got Thompson, Jones,
I'm looking,
Yandel.
The last one I see on here was free agent frenzy. It was, yeah, you're right. It was right around the end of everything. So we just did a huge recap in one episode.
Yeah, so a little bit of things happened since we've last done a podcast. The Flyers have signed their RFAs. We got the big signing yesterday, extension with Shankatourie. We're definitely going to get into that. Carter Hart, Travis Sanheim. We also got Derek Brassard as a last-minute free agent signing. So there's a lot of things to get into. So I want to talk about the Shankatourie contract because yesterday it was very out of the blue. We did not see this coming. Shankatourie extends his contract with the Flyers to 8 years, and he's going to be making around $7.75 million annually. And that was out of the left field. I did not expect that happening. I expected it because him and Drew were supposed to expire next year. I thought that was going to be something halfway towards the season for something like that to happen, or even going into next offseason where Drew and Couturier were probably going to be more discussed by then. But hey, Couturier signs his contract. He's going to be a Flyer basically until he's 38 years old?
36.
36, yeah.
I think around then.
Yeah.
Around then. But he's going to be a Flyer for life. I think that's the basic explanation for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when I'm thinking about that, for how long Couturier has been for a Flyer, he's been playing since he was 18 years old. Do you think he might have a chance to break Clark's record for most games played in a Flyers uniform?
He might. I mean, do you know how many he's at?
I think he's around the 600 mark. I think
Yeah.
the mid 600s, closer maybe towards 700s. I'm not entirely sure.
What's Clark's official number?
I would actually have to look that up.
What
I
is
know
it,
it's
1,500?
I think it's around there. So let me get Bobby Clark.
Yeah, Coots is at 692 right now. He's just under 700
Mhm.
regular season.
Yeah, so I think for Bobby Clark, he played a little over 1,100 games, 1,144. So I think, Couturier can definitely beat that. I think that's going to happen. Couturier is definitely good. It also depends if what happens with Giroux's contract. That's definitely going to be a discussion coming up in a little bit too, because there are talks about Giroux. They're probably not going to discuss contract negotiations until maybe halfway through the season. It's really just speculation at this point, most likely to see how the season progresses, if the Flyers are going to be a cup contender and they're going to show that sign to get back into the consistency of making the playoffs. But that's something we're not going to, stress about. We're going to have to play it as it happens at that point. So I want to get both of your thoughts on this Sean Couturier contract and what it could possibly mean for this team and just like the little details that involve in it. So Tyson, we haven't talked to you in a while, so let me get your thoughts on Coots' contract.
Yeah, it's crazy that I just think of the last contract, how much of an insane bargain it was. He had like a 4.3, just over 4.3 million cap hit for being basically the best defensive center in the NHL over the majority of that contract. And so now we're obviously, I think he's at 775 ish. I think is the number. Like that's still a crazy deal, like good contract in the sense of like you're talking still.
Yeah.
And as much as it's 8 years, like that's what some people are going to give some pushback on. Even like kind of deeper thinking analytics people are like, yeah, it's 8, but basically you bought yourself a significant amount of cap space over those last 3 seasons at least. So in other words, it's like where he likely would start falling off and regressing, if he's not, turning into Patrice Bergeron, which again, Bergeron's 36 now. And still that's kind of a similar kind of trajectory in terms of that type of player. That's probably the best comparison we have. He's still killing it at 36.
Exactly.
So I think if even there is somewhat of a regression, he's good enough defensively that the contract's not going to kill you. Even if he's bad the last 2 years, you still bought space for yourself in the first 5 or 6. So overall, I think it's a really good deal based on both cap hit and just how good he is. I was shocked when I thought at the lowest starting point would be like 8.8. Personally, like that would be the absolute lowest, and the fact he came in under that was crazy.
He probably could have got on the open market. He probably could have got 9 flat, just right out of the gate. But no, I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, I was surprised I was actually surprised that they even did it now, because if you think about it, they now have. I was just talking to Amedeo about this in the beginning. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. They now have 20.5 million in cap space for next year to re-sign Giroux, Farabee, Aubé-Kubel, Ristolainen, Braun, Yandel, Brassard, and Thompson. And a lot of those guys are either on 1-year deals or have 1 year left. So some of those will be easier. Some of those guys will take a pay cut. Some of those guys don't really, take much money. Like the Brassard and Thompson contracts were under $1 million. Aubé-Kubel is a little bit over $1 million. So, but yeah, I mean, listen, Coots is. I can't tell you how many times I've said this about Couturier. If there's a guy that is struggling on this team and you put him on a line with Couturier, they will start to play better and they will succeed and put up points, goals, whatever. We've seen it before. We saw in the beginning of the 1920 season where Voracek and JVR were basically doing absolutely nothing in really that first month of October. What happened? They put him with Couturier. That line was together for, I'd say, about a week and a half or so, probably 6-7 games, and they both started to light it up, and then everybody just kind of went going into that month of November. So when I look at it, I honestly, I could probably guarantee Coots will win probably 2 or 3 more Selkies in his career, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, if the team wasn't so bad last year and they played a lot better defensively, he might have still been up there. But obviously everybody knows how last year went. So yeah, I mean, listen, Coots, Coots is Coots. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, when he's on the ice, I'm not worried defensively or anything like that. So I'm glad that they were able to lock him up now and get that number 1 thing that they had to do for next season out of the way. And now they can kind of just focus on Drew and Amedeo, as you touched on earlier, that, he's probably going to halfway through the season, they'll look again. And they've obviously already had talks now. We heard that the other day yesterday from Fletcher. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, I couldn't agree more with Tyson. I love everything about the deal as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then just looking at for Couturier signing this contract, I think that also just showcases how much he liked what Chuck Fletcher has done this offseason. Just basically changing up the roster, going out there, setting a mission, and trying to make this team better for next year. You go out, get Cam Atkinson, you go out, get Keith Yandel, you get Ristolainen, and you get all these other guys. You get a Martin Jones to back up Carter Hart. And yeah, maybe some people are going to question those moves, but it definitely showcases a sign that Chuck Fletcher just mightily wants to try to improve this team, change the culture, and Shankatourie sees that, and it makes him want to sign a contract even more. You see how Cam Atkinson has just taken in Philadelphia ever since being traded here. You see him touring the city. You see him meeting Gritty. Just Cam Atkinson has basically just embodied Philadelphia and same thing with Derek Brassard. He said the first thing on his list was going to be Philadelphia. So now you're seeing players that want to play here now just because of what Chuck Fletcher is doing. That makes Couturier want to play here even more and maybe stay here for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
So that's a major pat on the back and a major A+ for Chuck Fletcher for doing this to get one of your best players signed up, locked up long term.
Right. And then honestly, just to go off your point there of Brassard, he had an offer from a West Coast team for more money, and he turned it down because he thought the Flyers were a better fit too. So that's even another thing. Like there's been guys that have had other offers and they've come to Philly. I know Yandel was another one. He said he had other offers and Philly was the first place he looked at.
Yeah, now it feels good for a little bit that some people are now looking at Philadelphia, because we're talking about like during the stretch of mediocrity that where Philadelphia probably wasn't the best landing point just because of where the team was at, what Ron Hextall, his direction was trying to do. But now when you have a GM that's trying to go out there and set a plan and set a mission, that's going to get players looking at that team and saying, hey, maybe I want to be a part of that. So some players are looking at Chuck Fletcher and they're agreeing with what he's doing, and they think the Flyers are in a good shape to possibly contend for next season. But I'm not going to go into full saying, oh, the Flyers are going to be this dynamic. I'm going to let the season play out how it is. I think they're going to be a much better team. They're going to be a fun team to watch for once, but I'm not going to go crazy. And then we also got a Joel Fairmeme saying Sankadelphia. Get all the Barstool guys in here. So, also talking about Barstool with the now with the NHL going into not this season coming up, the next season, going with jersey advertisements. I remember seeing someone doing it was Kevin Hayes doing a Photoshop of the Barstool logo on the Flyers jersey, and that like made people like either laugh or absolutely hate it. But just I guess get off topic, like what are your guys' thoughts on the jersey advertisements? Do you think it was inevitable with the helmet advertisements?
I figured it was going to happen at some point. It really was just a matter of time of what season it was going to come, honestly.
Yep. Yeah, they have a ton of revenue they got to make up for. And especially like in their collective bargaining, like I think it's estimated now it's over $1 billion the players are going to owe the owners in a few more years in escrow because of how that kind of is played out because of COVID and them not wanting to take a huge pay bump back because of lack of income coming in during shortened last season and the lack of revenue from playoffs the year before. So I think that more than anything, they're going to have to do everything they can in their local markets and collectively as a league to try to gain as much revenue as humanly possible. So I'm not surprised at all. I mean, they've been doing it in European soccer for forever. I know it's annoying. If you watch some of the like teams like Slovakia and stuff, they literally have like bumper stickers on their socks. I don't know if you've ever seen that, like on their actual socks, not even just their jerseys, but it'll be like 4 different brands of cars on one side and like 2 Icelandic beers and like a Czech beer on the other side or whatever. So like that's just like how they do it. And obviously like we're not going to get there here, but I mean, I think it'll be similar to the helmets. Like they said, it'll be like a singular crest, and just charge a crap load of money to some person for it. It wouldn't even surprise me if it matches what's on the helmet too. Like they'll just like charge them more, like so it doesn't clash.
Yeah,
that wouldn't surprise me either. But I think we'll just get used to it real quick, and it'll be like we won't even notice it after maybe the first month or so, whenever they do that.
because that was the thing with the helmet ads. Like everybody was like, "Oh, they're gonna be weird," and then like I was kind of used to it by like a couple games in.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's something
I stopped paying.
I
I didn't even notice it after about a couple weeks. Really, I was like, "Oh, okay."
And this is like kind of, I guess, like a pipe dream to finally get the Flyers to advertise Wawa somewhere. So maybe
Yes.
Wawa will get the advertisement on the jersey.
Yes.
I know the Sixers with their jersey advertisement. I know they do StubHub, which is like, I wish you could do something more Philadelphia related. For hopefully it comes to Wawa, but I know they're going to do something like corporate or something like that because it's Comcast. So the Comcast will always shut down your dreams. But
yeah,
I don't think any of the because I know the Eagles used to be sponsored with Wawa, right? And now it's the Ravens. Aren't the Ravens like the official football team under Wawa?
I'm not sure actually.
I think they are.
I'm honestly not sure.
Used to be.
I know the Eagles were sponsored by Acme. I don't remember them being sponsored by Wawa.
I know they're the official hoagie of the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, they are.
That's what it is.
They do have a partnership with the Eagles of some sort, but
yeah.
I'm not sure what if it's on the jerseys, but that's funny.
That just feels wrong, honestly, for that to be the official hoagie of the Baltimore Ravens. That just feels wrong, in my opinion.
That's terrible.
It feels so. You also got a tasty cake. Maybe that could be an advertisement for.
Imagine Survey brings that back. He scores for a case of tasty cakes.
I mean, they haven't done that in a while. They can honestly do that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's weird. It's weird how this stuff plays out too. Like I think of the shirt I'm wearing, the Kraken, right? There's actually a brewery that's really close to where the Kraken will play, called Fremont Brewing in Seattle, and they have a beer, an IPA they've had on their list for years called the Sky Kraken. Like, and I have like cans and stuff, and I've been there, and I was like, well, of course that'll be the official craft beer of the Seattle Kraken. No, there's like some random brewery in Southern Oregon that like is the official craft brewery that has absolutely nothing to do with them. So it's like there's like opportunity, but it still ultimately comes down to the dollar amount, because to me it just made branding sense. It's like, what should be the official craft beer of the Kraken? A Kraken beer. that would make sense to me, but no, it's not. So it's just how it goes.
Yeah. The things that make the most sense tend out to not be the actual thing. So that sucks. We also got a donation from Oscar the Grouch, $1.99, saying merch being ordered. Thank you, Oscar, for that donation. And he also says he has no clue, but it looks stupid. What do you mean? What are you trying to reference there? The merchandise? Or are you trying to reference the jersey ads?
Our faces,
or maybe that.
Hopefully, my face.
And then we also have Sean Fitzpatrick saying Derek Brassard is a difference maker. God damn it, with the heavy butcher on the misspelling of Derek Brassard's name. How you doing, Sean? It's always good to have you back. We also got Penguins will have Gus the Groundhog, the second most famous groundhog in Pennsylvania, as their advertisement. Oh boy.
Not Phil, huh? Not Phil.
Oh boy. And we also got a question from Joel saying, does anyone even know what TCS is? Was on the helmet all year and he still has no idea. It was some type of
it's like the energy thing they did with Wells Fargo Center.
Yeah,
it's
an energy
whole
company.
Renovation. Yeah.
Yes, so that was the advertisement that was on the Flyers helmets. So I guess to get away from the advertisements and sponsorships, sadly we are not sponsored at all. So I wish we were, but we're not. We also got a question right here from Kevin asking, are the Flyers Cup contenders? Oof. So that's a tough one to go about.
We could really dive into that right now if we want to.
I mean, I don't care. I don't. We don't have that much to talk about.
I saw that and I was like, that might be a topic for a video later today. But if we really are going to dive into this, I think there's a couple ways you could answer this. You could say yes because of everything they've done, right, in this offseason, and you could also say no because you can argue that at the same time that another team could be better or whatever. I think you could also say number two that we thought that they would be good last year and they didn't, so that could blow up on our face again. But again, I don't think that will happen because I think they've changed a lot internally. And honestly, I think number three would probably be that I don't think legitimately any player is going to have that bad of a season they did last year. I just cannot see it happening. It's just like, to me, it just doesn't seem humanly possible for somebody to play that bad again.
Yeah, when you have when you have as bad as a season as the team had last year, it's like everything possibly wrong could have went wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's I mean, how many times we say that, Amedeo? Like,
too much.
Yeah, too much. Exactly. It got to the point where I was literally repeating myself in every game recap video I did because it was the same thing happening every game. I couldn't think of anything else to say. So when it gets to that point, it gets extremely frustrating. And obviously, there's nobody more frustrated than the players. So when you look at it, I think, you could say yes just because, I think they're a cup contender. You know what I mean? Then you have those people that just bet money on sports, and they're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna bet money on the Flyers just because." So I don't know, but
Chris, I want to ask you this question: Is are the Flyers more of a frustrating team than the Philadelphia Phillies?
God.
Because that's a good argument because
it really is because.
Because we're all talking about a couple of weeks ago the Phillies could win the division, 8-game win streak, and then they fall flat on their ass. The past couple of weeks they come back to reality.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you put four games coming up against they sweep the Mets, right? They're 2.5 above. The Braves are a little iffy. The Mets are going downhill. That's their chance. That is their chance. What happens? They lose. Two of 3 to the Dodgers. They lose 2 of 3 to the Reds. They get swept by the Diamondbacks. They lose 2 to the Rays, and now they're playing the Diamondbacks again, and they lose. And last night, the Diamondbacks probably deserved to lose that game last night because of how bad it was.
Oh yeah, they did. But don't let
ended up losing anyway.
Don't let that 9th inning fool you. That is not the Phillies.
No,
don't let that 5-run 9th inning fool you.
What surprises me with the Phillies is the fact that, regardless of whoever pitches well, the bats are silent. If the pitching is bad, the bats are fantastic. There's just no divide. I swear to God that 3 games against the Mets might have been the best Phillies games I have seen since I probably could remember. I mean, I legitimately don't remember when literally everything was going right for that team. I don't remember the last time. It had to be probably 08, maybe probably 11. But still, like, it's horrible, man. They're a disgrace, and now they're. Dude, I can't talk about the Phillies. I'll go off.
That'll be an entire podcast in itself. I feel like if you rant about them, that'll be an entire Flyed Up podcast.
Yeah,
even though it is, you had to rebrand it. You have to rebrand the entire damn thing. So we got some other comments here. We got Hockey Express saying he bought a Simone Gagne jersey. He is insanely happy, and I'm insanely jealous. I love the Simone Gagne. We got Ed saying that Coots needs to stay healthy in order for him to break Clark's record. And there's also an interesting comment here from Renee saying now the Flyers are better than the Penguins, Islanders, Capitals, and the Bolts.
It's so hard. I mean,
you could say maybe. The other one, hell no. Tampa, no way. The Penguins.
Penguins, I would say they could be better. The Caps, I say they could be better. The Islanders, maybe not. The Bolts, no way in hell. No one's
well.
better.
God,
Dyson.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I was just writing out stuff, and like in their division, it's like, basically the Islanders, the Pens, and the Caps are gonna be roughly the same. I think, like, as good as last year. Carolina is worse on paper, I think. Columbus significantly worse. The Devils significantly worse. The Devils are better, and Philly is better. But I think we basically have in that division alone a very small margin of, once we see some more of the analytical numbers, like I think it's going to be a really close margin between the Flyers, Islanders, Penguins, and Caps. And then I think there's a drop below that to the other one. So and Tampa lost their whole third line, that really good third line, but they still have all those other pieces, it's like, it's just, I mean, you can't really compete with their top 6 still and their top 4D. It just is what it is. And Vasilevsky.
Right.
Then you also have the Rangers in the Metro Division doing everything possible to make a move that can defend themselves against Tom Wilson.
Right, but they got worse in the process. That's what
they did.
Like when I was looking at that, it's like you got rid of Bushnevich for Ryan Reeves and like Barclay Goodrow. Like you get rid of a top 6 forward for that.
Yeah, and they got Sammy Blais back. And I thought that they were going to get Tarasenko. I'm like, that's an open spot for a winger, and he's left. I'm like, why won't they go for Tarasenko? You imagine him with Panarin. But one thing I did want to mention, though, is Carolina is a tricky one because they got better in goaltending, but they lost their number one right-handed defenseman in Hamilton. Yeah. Still have Slavin. They still have Pesci.
They added Ethan Bear, who's really underrated and has really good underlying numbers. But
what the hell are the Oilers thinking there?
I don't know. Duncan Keith or Ethan Bear? I'd take Ethan Bear nowadays any day.
Yeah,
and then they sign Darnell Nurse to that contract.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was poor McDavid. I feel so bad for him all the time.
I don't really think Keith is that bad of a player as people make him out to be. I still think he has a lot of game left in him, and I think he could be better because I think that's another thing that the Oilers kind of need is a veteran in that locker room who's won 3 cups. You know what I mean? So Keith is that guy. So that could be something. But on the other side, they got Warren Fogle, who isn't bad. He can put you 15. He can put up 15, 20 goals, but the one thing that I don't understand is they've gone in this direction where they've made the playoffs the last 2 years in a row. They want to build on that, but it seems like they just went backwards pretty much. And with Klefbom being out, Oscar Klefbom I think he's out for he was out all of last year. I think he's out all this year too.
Yeah.
So that's another defenseman that they're down on, and he's arguably their number one defenseman. And I think that's probably why Nurse got that deal because he's played so good with him being out, and also had a lot of minutes. But I'm not too sure.
The Cody Ceci one, that's what made it weird more than even Keith, I should say. I'm a big Duncan Keith fan. He's from my hometown, so I have like all sorts of stuff autographed by him and whatever over the years. So it feels weird for me to say he's not as good anymore. But no, even more so like Cody Ceci, it was like $3.325 million a year, and you have Ethan Bear for $2 million. This is very strange, but I mean, I know this is kind of an offshoot, but yeah, I mean, in that division, I think like even in the division, I think the Flyers could. I mean, they got significantly better. When I look at the depth chart, they're significant. It's not even close. They're other than goaltending. I think goaltending got worse, but other than goaltending, they're significantly better. So we'll see.
Yeah. They're like you can argue that Chuck Fletcher went through this entire offseason ranting about team defense, and he overhauled the defense. He got forwards that can play defensively. You got Cam Atkinson, who could be one of the better defensive wingers in the league. He's really good shorthanded. He can score goals. He could do basically everything for a winger possibility, just two-way.
He helped out he went from literally built from the backup goaltender up and really helped out the penalty kill. Because the one question I have, though, is the power play still. Like, what happens with the power play? Because it's going to be completely different now. Like, you don't have Voracek on that side anymore to interchange with Giroux. So what do you do there? How do you run that, right? Then I look at the second unit. First of all, you have a shit ton of options from guys from Atkinson, Farabee, Allison. I mean, these are all guys that can shoot. They can pass. They can do connect me, right? We could go on and on. I mean, literally Ellis, Provorov, Sanheim, and Ristolainen can all quarterback a power play. And
Yandel.
Right, Yandel too. So what do you do there? Does Yandel get power play time? Does Provorov get the number one unit? I think he does. Ellis, that's another one. Ristolainen, Sanheim, as we said, like there's 5 defensemen you have there. The only one who legitimately cannot do a power play is Braun. That's it. And then you also have Cam York too.
You say all that, then Braun quarterbacks the power play.
Right. He's like on the second unit. Right.
Now Morin. Braun and Morin.
I mean, I'd rather take Morin because at least Morin can fire the puck.
But, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, they have a lot of options. And then York, as they said, too, you have Frost, still a question mark. You have Brassard who can play power play time. You have Hayes, you have Couturier, Giroux. I mean, there's so many options. So I'm very curious to see how they run the power play units. And I'm very curious to see what that looks like at training camp. Because, again, as I said, there's so many options. And I don't know if they go with the same setup they did last year. Did they keep the same setup they've had? I mean, I love it. What I never understood with the power play was everybody would always say it's very easy to predict. I think the Capitals have probably had the exact same power play setup for over 10 years, and it works legitimately every time.
Yeah, when you have that weapon in Ovechkin, of course it's going to be the same every year. You just find a way to get Ovechkin the one time the puck. You got Oshie in the slot that has a wicked one-timer. Backstrom can literally dish the puck out with ease. You got Carlson on the point. Right. No wonder why it could be they're so successful. Those guys
Yeah.
are dynamic on the power play.
Because literally everybody can shoot. You have Oshie in the slot, you got Kuznetsov, you have Backstrom, you have Ovechkin. Every single one of those guys can shoot the puck and pass it. The whole thing is a total weapon. The entire power play.
I don't know. I feel like you might be surprised with the power play setup this year. I think Alain Vigneault is going to try to maybe shake up something different just because of the overhaul of the roster. I think you're going to see something a little bit different. My gut feeling, I do think Yandle might quarterback power play 1. That's just my gut feeling.
I'd say 2.
And then I feel like they might go with a 2 defenseman setup on the second power play unit, just because you have so many options.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Ellis used to lead the NHL, I think, in power play minutes at one point too. So
Ellis,
I believe at one point in his career. So I've wondered about him being on the first unit because he's a right shot too, adding an extra weapon and having him and Atkinson kind of more set up on the right corner where Voracek was, and then a second unit could easily be Provorov and Yandle, and still be, because they might actually be better offensively than some of the other options they might have further down their lineup at forward anyway.
Right.
Yeah, so there's an infinite amount of possibilities, and with the penalty kill as well. Now you adding Atkinson, maybe Brassard can slot in there. Thompson's definitely going to be a penalty killer since he's a bottom 6 grinder. Hayes is definitely going to be one of those guys. Couturier is going to be one of those guys. So now you have options.
It honestly makes me wonder where they use Allison too, because I would love him in the bumper, right in the slot. That would be perfect. And then it honestly, a lot of things with the power play too is that I feel like we've seen. It just makes me wonder. I don't know, Amedeo, if you remember this, but last year, not 2021, 1920. There was one. They scored a power play goal against Washington. They literally only did the setup one time. They scored on it, then never did it again. It was Giroux. They won the faceoff, and Giroux was low behind the net, and Couturier was in his spot. And he passed it out for a one-timer, and Coots scored. They won the draw clean. They set it up. It was perfect. It was that game they won 7-2 on the road on Saturday night.
It was something like that, probably.
I don't know why I remember it so perfectly. It's one of the things. I've talked about it with Bill Meltzer before, and he was saying, I remember it because I did it throughout the offseason, but he had said, they would do that, but Giroux likes to play on his side, and obviously Coots doesn't want to really be on that side either, so they go with what the player prefers, and that's fine. But they scored on it once. That was my thing. They scored on it one time, never used it again. Never. It just went away. So it makes me wonder now with a bunch of different options, and obviously the changes in handness of the guys that you have now. Atkinson is right-handed, Voracek's left, so that's obviously different too. And then obviously, as I said, you got Farabee of Allison. So again, I just don't know what the setup will look like. And obviously, we talked about the defensemen and everything, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But I think the preseason games are really going to show what happens with the power play, because my guess would be the power play and the lines are different every night. And that last game is probably when that's most likely your opening roster. So,
and there's going to be an insane amount of competition in camp, too, for the last forward spot, because I'm looking at the depth chart and I'm going, basically the lineup is done except for one slot at forward. It's going to be, I think, a competition between Frost, which people have been forgetting about, right? Because he was injured for most of last year. Frost, Allison, Lazinski, who played some games, right? Bunneman. There's going to be a healthy amount of, we even put Nate Thompson maybe in that category now that we have Brassard in there. I think he slots ahead of him on the depth chart. And if you're going center, if you're doing Coots, Hayes, Lawton, Brassard as an option there, I think you easily could do that to spread out the offense, and you're going to have just this insane amount of competition. So I think that'll see how that goes too, because Frost, for example, he can play the point or the left side wall really well in the power play too. He's done that his whole junior and even the AHL, and he's got amazing hands in tight too. He scored some really great goals even early in his Flyers career doing that. So I think there's a sense of we'll really see how this lineup comes up. There's going to be a high amount of competition that plays out, and it also wouldn't surprise me if they move somebody too. They easily could. They might have to, because of just having too many bodies and needing to give. You got to give something to one of the younger players here. Allison's maybe 25 this year. So you gotta start to kind of take that in consideration a little bit.
Right. And one thing just to go off your point, what you were saying, the depth chart, and then obviously Allison. So obviously you guys remember when they signed Sanheim, right? That deal put them over the cap to begin with. So the Sanheim contract put the Flyers $643,523 over the cap, and that deal would be more because if you look at cap friendly right now, they have 13 forwards, right? If Allison makes the team out of camp, which pretty much everybody and their godmother is expecting him to, I can't see why he wouldn't. I think he will. But if he does, that means they go into the season with 14 forwards and 7 defensemen. That would be another $925,000 added onto that. That's only if Allison makes it. Then you have to add Brassard at the same time, and that's more money that's added on. So if Allison makes it and Brassard, I think the Brassard signing leads me to believe that Frost is probably starting the season in the AHL, which I think is a good thing anyway because he's coming off the injury. And I think that's kind of the same thing with York. You give them 10 games in the AHL, see how they do. They'll both probably light it up. I don't see why they wouldn't. Frost might take a little bit more time because of being hurt, but he's another guy. I mean, I've never seen some guy get so much hate for only literally playing 2 organized hockey games in a year and a half. It's incredible. Like I just don't understand it. I feel like it's like Nolan Patrick all over again with everybody just hating on him. But yeah, I mean, go ahead, Amedeo. I feel like you want to say something.
I feel like Frost gets a lot of hate just because there's like a certain section of the fan base that really that really loves him. They try to elevate like he's going to be this elite player. He's going to be the next, and that's what's also going to anger the other section of the fan base that doesn't believe that. It's going to make them hate Frost even more when he doesn't play. So it's just a whole mess up and slop and everything like that. It's just the fan base being the fan base. But Joel also brings up a good point here, talking about like if you're looking to possibly have to move it forward. Me and Chris, we and him talked before we started the podcast. We're saying that maybe Nicolas Aube-Kubel might be the odd guy out, and maybe he's a guy that they have to move just because he makes a little bit over $1 million. And that if you move him, you maybe get him for a draft pick. You clear that cap space and you add at least $1 million onto it.
Yeah. Aube-Kubel's cap hit is $1,075,000. So he makes literally like a little bit over $1 million. But that would still make them, if you're adding 643, whatever I said, it was 643,523 plus Brassard's 825 and then the 925. You're looking at like 2.4, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, about that.
I'm trying to add it up now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, too, his contract's variable, too, if they can't trade. I'm like, you get cap relief if you send him to the minors. And it might end up being, too, you see a lot of gymnastics throughout the season, cap gymnastics. Like, I think the Leafs last year set a record for most transactions in a season because it would be like, for example, you have like a day, you have a player that's making league minimum, right, $750K. So you don't have a game that day or practice or whatever. And you send down the guy like Allison that doesn't need waivers. It's a 925 hit. And you call up the guy that never even leaves his AHL affiliate, but he makes 750, right? So then you're getting those cap savings concurrently over the year. And the Leafs did that like literally every day. It'd be like 4 of those, like 3 or 4 of those transactions. It'd be like, we called up this person. We sent these 4 down. So there's like when the number's that low, it also wouldn't surprise me too to see them just keep that low number. And because the affiliate, their AHL affiliate is so close to Philly, like it would be one of those things where the guy would still be at practice. Like if you guys were in the Flyers practice facility, you'd see somebody, let's just say like Frost playing in practice, acting though he's going to play the next day, not even wearing like a spare jersey, but he'll have been sent to the minors. And he'll just never leave. He'll still practice. And then the next day they'll call him up again just before the game and he'll play. So there's a lot of those sort of things we'll see, I think, throughout this year. I think they're close enough that it's going to be okay once they do some of that. And there's also assumptions that some players will get put on injury reserve at some point. I don't think they have any LTIR, do they?
I don't think they do. No.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think that's probably more of what it'll end up being. It'll be real close, but I think they'll be able to do some of those daily sort of transactions and it'll even itself out.
Yeah, they did that a lot last year, actually, too. There were so many paper transactions to where, like, people thought the cap was this low, but actually, like, at the trade deadline, the Flyers had, like, around, I think it was, like, 12 million cap space, apparently, or something like. I know Charlie O'Connor explained it. It's a very confusing process, but it's just, like, a bunch of paper transactions just to add more money to the cap.
Yep.
So that, like, I guess that's, like, the loophole in the cap, probably, most likely. Something that they're probably going to have to discuss in the CBA.
Yeah, and going to what you were saying for LTIR, there's per cap friendly. There's nothing on here. The only thing on here is Brizgalov with the dead cap, and he literally makes $0. That's what it says until 26-27.
Good old Ilya
Brizgalov. Yeah,
good,
it's like Tampa Bay right now is almost 89 million in cap space.
Yeah,
and they'll be under
Vegas, probably.
That's their cap hit.
Yeah, it's 88.4-ish million right now. Yeah, but they have Brent Seabrook's contract that they just took on, and they'll do some LTIR stuff, like that'll get them under again, like they did last year. But still, it's
the same thing with Vegas. Their cap hit right now is projected to be exactly 0. So it's weird too because they still haven't signed Nolan Patrick either. So I'm like, what kind of contract are they going to give Nolan Patrick? Is he even going to sign? I don't know. Like
he'll sign.
He'll sign.
Yeah. Their GM was his coach in junior, so I just think it'll be low. I think again.
George McPhee.
It's just like weird. You see a bunch of these teams that are like accordingly, it's the off season. Like you're going to have teams that are going to be over the cap, but then you're eventually going to have to become cap compliant once the season starts. So you're probably going to be seeing a lot of teams doing these transactions probably around when the season is going to start, trying to get under the cap space. And also that kind of like ties into maybe like you see with Connor Bunnaman's new contract that he signed. The first year is 2-way, but then the second year is 1-way. So maybe Chuck Fletcher was preparing for this type of season because he knew the cap was going to be strung up like it was. So he signed Bunnaman to that so it could be easier to process so he doesn't have to go through waivers.
Yeah. That could be something.
Or maybe
it could be maybe he just thinks Bunnaman would be more developed by then and won't have to play in the AHL. That's probably another thing too.
You could also think about that. And then you also have the newer contracts that they signed. You got Carter Hart's new contract. He's making $3.979 for the next 3 seasons. You got Sanheim getting close to the arbitration date, but he signed like a couple of days before it, and they settled at a 2-year contract, $4.675 million. I know people at the point of that sign, they're like, whoa, this is way overpaid for Travis Sanheim. He had a terrible season. He doesn't deserve anything above $3 million. But
he was already making 3.2. So
yeah, he was going to get a pay raise no matter what.
Right.
So basically, it was just the arbitration settler just meeting in the middle. You got Chuck Fletcher, maybe he's looking at around $4 million. Sanheim's maybe looking between $4.55 million. You'll be in the middle, you get 4.6.
Yeah.
So there you go. And then you have, so the Flyers did sign a couple of entry-level contracts, specifically their second-round pick from this year, Tuomala. So I know, Tyson, you're really into the Flyers prospect system. I want to get your thoughts on just him as a prospect in general and what he could possibly be for the Flyers for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, first off, he was really great value in the second round. I had him in my top 32 prospects, so I had him closer to the end of the first round, but he's one of those guys where like his tools are like considered his skating in particular is considered exceptional. He has like a really good overall toolkit. It's just more a question of, can he put every piece together to be a sort of top 6 forward, or he'll just kind of be, or will he be kind of like a fast third, fourth line kind of aggressive player? And so I think where scouts sort of went back and forth was on his upside. So some were like, oh, his tools make me think he's going to be potential top 6 forward, at worst like a middle 6 forward, and others being like, well, I think he'll be more like a fringe third, fourth line guy. And so that's where we saw a lot of the debate, though. In this draft, it was insane. Like, I feel like that was over half of the players taken in the first and second round, like, because there's just so many question marks. So to get a player like that in the second round was exceptional value. So I thought that was a really good pick. And I'm curious it wouldn't surprise me if he does play in Finland. I could be wrong, but I think that's the plan, is for him to play. He's going to try AHL? Okay.
OHL. Either OHL or AHL. because he could play with the Phantoms too. But
Okay.
I've heard OHL, but I wouldn't be surprised if he went to Finland for another year. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, and so I think it's one of those things where it just keeps that option open. I think giving him that contract right off the bat, I think would try to kind of get him in North America sooner rather than later, and I think that they want to do that. And probably, I think some of the issue is with some of these guys coming over from leagues like Finland is they might play against like tougher competition, like in adult leagues, and he played a little bit against that, but they are also not getting the same ice time and reps with the puck. So if you have a player like him that you're like, oh man, he's a really good skater, he's got really good skills, but he needs to be playing 20 minutes a night instead of like 8, like as a fourth liner in Finland's top league. And then their junior leagues like kind of meh, right? Especially once you're past your draft eligible age. I think that they're gonna, I think it wouldn't surprise me if they try to get him over here like as soon as this season, if not the next. Yeah. But yeah, overall he was a really good pick in the second round. Like when you go through the other players that were available in the second, like at the time, that was an exceptional value pick. Like there's only two other players I think that I had ranked higher than him that were taken before him.
What? What's his face? Rotti.
Yep, and Chibrikov.
Yeah.
I had Chibrikov in my top 20, so that one surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was a good pick, so my thoughts.
And Chris, I know because I know this draft you probably weren't as, I guess, in the process of it just because it was so questionable, the prospects, like you're maybe more on the unknown side. But I know since the Flyers signed him to the ELC so quickly, I want to get your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I love Tuomo. I mean, I saw some film on him. Again, I wasn't too, as you said, I mean, I wasn't really too into it as it was last year. It was really just because we had absolutely no idea, and every mock draft had completely different from the other one. So there really wasn't anything that was set in stone of who was going to go number one besides Owen Power, and that was just because of the way that the Sabres felt with what they needed and position wise. So that was pretty much it. I mean, when you looked at it, I think I was looking at Simon Edvinsson was another guy I wanted for the Flyers, and he went like 78.
Yeah,
he was projected like I think early second round or maybe late first round, something like that. But a lot of guys dropped. So again, it was kind of hard to try to look at all that because it's not like the easiest thing when you look at it and then when guys drop and then you get like that pick that's like, whoa, like I didn't think that guy would go there. You know what I mean? So there were some guys like the Flyers had an overager in Kolosov, the goaltender they took in the third round. He was 19. He didn't get drafted last year and he ended up getting picked this year. But again, I like Tuomo. I thought when I looked at him, he really reminded me of Laine a little bit. I don't want to I'm not comparing him. I'm just saying it looked like Laine. He's like that big right-hander from Finland that can shoot the puck. That just reminds me of Laine. So, again, he's something that every Flyers fan has been complaining about since they took York over Caulfield. So they took a shooter, they took a goal scorer. So I like it. I think it could be a good pick, and I was kind of hoping that we'd maybe see some footage of them at development camp, but it doesn't look like there will be really any fans. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there in the next coming days. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
I will say that Fletcher got really good value since he's taken over in the second round each and every year. I mean, last year was Emil Andre and then Bobby Brink the year before. So like he's just gotten guys in the first two rounds in both drafts. You could have some debate, even last year about Forster, perhaps. I mean, he went probably where I expected him to go. Cam York went, even though with the Caulfield thing on the table, he still went where I roughly thought he should go. So neither of those picks are necessarily surprising in and of themselves, but he's been gotten really good value. And to speak on how weird the draft was, like Dallas took a guy at 23, Wyatt Johnston. He did not play last year. So he played for Canada at the under 18s in a checking role, not even like a top 6 role.
Right.
And he went 23rd. And so, that's
what that means when teams go with their guys. That's exactly
And that's what made it so strange is that in my head, when I was trying to predict even, I was looking at like when you said Robertson that went in the third round, I assumed he'd be a late first or early second that teams would look at particularly because he actually played.
Right.
So I gave the advantage. I figured teams would give the advantage to players that they had actually seen play, like Tamala and guys like that as well. And that was just not the case. So a lot of teams just jumped on the guys that they were very comfortable with, and it was a rather very strange, reality.
And I think it's also good too because with the juniors now allowing people that played in the AHL last year, they're going to allow them to continue playing down there. So you're going to get Tyson Forrester back with the Phantoms. You're going to get Zade Wisdom back with the Phantoms. And then you're going to be adding most likely some other young players that might not make the team. Most likely, I don't think Cam York's going to make the team out of camp. It's like what Chris said. He might play down in Lehigh Valley for maybe like 10, 15 games if he doesn't make the roster.
I thought he would, but before they signed Yandel was why I said York. But now that Yandel's there, it's like that's kind of what that contract's for, just to buy time.
And then you also have Morin as the seventh defenseman, most likely.
Right.
So you put York down with the Phantoms. Most likely he'll be that first pair role. I would assume maybe Jaeger Zamula also gets the first pairing role. So maybe you pair both of those together. Maybe you put them on different lines.
I know last year they had Zamula with Wiley, so they might continue with that. If not, they might do York. But you also have Hoegberg. I'm trying to think. I know the Phantoms also did have a bunch of AHL depth signings that they always do every year, and some of those guys will probably play. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that.
And then most likely, since you don't have Alex Lyon either, so now maybe this will be a season for Sandstrom and Ustamenko to prove themselves more, possibly.
I do know Zane McIntyre is still a free agent. They could re-sign him, but Tyson, I know you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was gonna say also have like on defense and like they'll have Mason Millman, competing, and Wiley. I still love that name. Guys like that will be I think in competition too. But yeah, I think goalie wise, it'll be they might sign one other depth guy now that they've lost Lyon. So
if you're looking at like maybe some of the non-roster forwards, I think Wade Allison most likely will make the team out of camp. Tanner Linzinski, I wouldn't say he probably won't make the team out of camp. So that's another young guy that's going to go down to the Phantoms. Tyson Forrester, one of those as well. Maybe Jackson Cates. He's one of those guys that goes down to Lehigh Valley after training camp. There's a lot of people down there that you can look at. Zade Wisdom, Ratcliffe is still going to be down there. Linus Sandine, he's probably going to be down there. I doubt he makes the team out of camp. So I would the Phantoms might be a little exciting for people that live in Lehigh Valley that go to Phantoms games, have season tickets. So you might have an exciting team like you had last year.
Yeah.
So that
Adam Clendenning, that's the guy that'll be down there too. I forgot about him. Yeah,
I know. Now that it makes me wonder, like with the Brassard signing, I wonder if they strictly just do like vets for the start for the first handful of games and see how it goes, and then maybe they call up some guys. Maybe guys like Alice can do start of the season in Lehigh Valley.
That's the one thing that I also was like thinking about with a bunch of these veteran signings. Like veteran leadership, yes, it's amazing, but I'm also like trying to think of like what could this possibly do for maybe the younger guys that are trying to push for a roster spot, because when you were going into last season, there were a lot of roster spots that were open to young guys, and maybe some of them were more guaranteed than not. So when you sign a lot of these guys, you sign Keith Yandel, you sign Nate Thompson, you sign Derek Brassard, you bring in guys like Atkinson, you bring in all of these different players for the roster, you bring in Ristolainen. Maybe that Chuck Fletcher is also trying to, okay, I don't want to rely on the young guys. I don't want to guarantee them a spot right at a training camp. So bring in a lot of these guys that could also help our team, but could also push the young guys that are trying to push for a roster spot, make them showcase why they deserve to be in the NHL. And maybe that benefits them more because they're trying to prove themselves instead of just going for a guaranteed spot. So maybe York, that gives him a chance to prove himself. It'll give Frost another chance to prove himself once again. Allison, a chance to prove, and all these other young guys that could possibly, Zamula, a chance to prove themselves. So I feel like that's also like, maybe it's definitely not the main reason why Chuck Fletcher went after it, but it's like, I feel like that's like, you look at like, maybe it's one of the minor details if you look at that for some of these young guys.
And one thing to add to that too, I think he did say he had a conversation with AV and they kind of talked about that, and they wanted to make sure that they were certain, and they wanted to make sure that their depth was good, especially the 3C spot. So probably, I think that was one of the biggest reasons why they, signed Brassard, and he was obviously open. And again, from playing with AV, before and having some of his best career numbers with the Rangers. I mean, the Flyers will be his 7th team that he's played on since 2017-18. So he's bounced around the league a lot.
Yes,
so,
but he also has a lot of playoff experience.
Yeah, he has 905 games under his belt.
What is that, like the most in the Flyers? I think he has the most. I think right now on the current Flyers roster, he has the most playoff experience in terms of games played.
Oh, yeah. Regular season, I'm not sure.
No, I doubt it's regular season. That's the most on the Flyers. But there's also a question in terms of prospects and young guys from the Soda Man. He asked what he would like to know is what is up with the development with Joe O'Brien. I don't know. I personally don't know. Tyson, do you have any idea?
BU next year, right?
Yeah, he'll be in his. It'll be interesting to see. He might be a candidate to sign at the end of the season. We'll see, because he played his freshman year at Providence, right, and then he left and played a year in Canada in the BCHL, and then he played at BU last year, and he had a good season. He put up a point per game for BU in a shortened season. So I think that he's progressing. I think the ceiling that maybe we thought, when he got drafted is a little high at this point. Time will tell, though. But I think that he is actually progressing. I think that more than anything, this season will be really telling. If he takes another step offensively, at least equals last year, that'll be good. But in terms of upside, I think we're moving away from, second line center. I think a lot of people were projecting when he got drafted. I think we're thinking more of a bottom six kind of two-way role if everything goes according to plan. So I don't think the Flyers have given up from him. I could be wrong. I think he still has some potential. He's still only 21, I believe. Yeah, 21. So he's got some time yet. So
yeah, I think when the Flyers drafted him, I think they knew they were getting into a major project, because wasn't he drafted like right out of high school? And then then he goes to Providence. They go to the Final Four in the NCAA, and then he didn't have that good of a first college year to where he went to the BCHL. So you knew that the development thing with him was going to be a project. So I know a lot of people, like when Hextall drafted him, it was like, oh, the ceiling could be endless with Jay O'Brien. It could be a major boom or bust type of pick. But I guess that's what happens when you get into a project type of pick. That's basically what it's going to be.
It reminded me a bit of the Mark Jankowski pick. Jankowski played for Pittsburgh last year, but he was in the Flames system for a really long time. And it was a similar situation. They drafted him out of a league that I don't think any NHL player had been drafted out of ever. Like at the time, it was like a junior league in Canada. And I remember Jay Feaster was Calgary's GM then. And he was like, yeah, I'll expect to see him in like 6 years. And we're like, what? And it wasn't that like direct coming from the Flyers, but you're talking, it's been 3 years since his draft year now. So yeah, basically. And so you're talking, probably we're thinking at least another 2 to 3 more. So it's a similar sort of trajectory if everything goes well to Jankowski. So, and Jankowski was at best, a third line center. He was a fourth liner for the Pens last year. So that's kind of what you're looking at.
Sam Bennett, right? He's kind of in like similar boat. Like, wasn't he projected to be like top 6 forward and just hasn't really? And they got traded to Florida, but I know Calgary. Everybody is kind of hard on him.
Yeah, I mean, he was a top 4 guy that draft year. Some guys had him as high as 2. Yeah. And I think the Flames took him 4. And that one was really strange to me because he was a guy that you look at and you're like, okay, even if he doesn't put up points, he plays really aggressive. He's really tenacious in junior. Like, he'd fight anybody. He was just a player that he's small, but you just valued him. It's like, man, he's got really good hands. He's really good. But he's also has this level of aggressiveness and tenaciousness to his game where if he doesn't hit his ceiling, who cares? But he just didn't even look that way half the time in Calgary. He just looked like he couldn't put anything together offensively, and he didn't look that way. But, I mean, he looked good in Florida after the trade, so maybe it's that simple. They just signed him to an insane contract, I think, but over $4 million a year. But yeah, there's probably a little bit of similarity there. I think people were higher on Bennett than on O'Brien, but I remember at the time people saying too when Hextall chose him, if he hadn't have taken him there, it was a little bit of a surprise that there was at least 4 or 5 other teams that had planned on taking him in the first round, or at least going in the first round. So. It's the thing about drafts, right? Hindsight is always 20/20.
Right.
It's funny when you talk about that contract, like where you said, like, oh, it's an outrageous contract, $4 million a season. I'm like thinking about this, like Couturier signs his contract, so he makes $7.75 million a year, and like we all know, like with the NHL, like compared to the other leagues, the payment is just like drastically worse. It's just like Sean Couturier, maybe like 3 years of Bryce Harper's contract is going to be the entirety of what Sean Couturier makes. I'm just like, jeez, like I can understand, I can see like why NHL players are definitely. I feel like they're going to try to bring that up in the next CBA just because they feel like I feel like definitely NHL players deserve to get paid way more, because when you're looking at a bunch of these leagues, like people are getting paid like nothing compared to the NHL. It's just like I don't know, because with the way the NBA does it, they don't have a salary cap. I can't describe what the NBA specifically does. It's not like what MLB does.
With baseball, like they don't have
they don't have a salary cap. They have a luxury tax.
Yeah.
Well, they have a cap and a tax, right? But it's a soft cap, so you don't get you just pay a tax for every year over. Yeah.
Isn't the NFL like you can't go over like a certain number?
Yeah.
I think the NFL does have a salary cap, but it's way higher than what the NHL's is.
And it's not like a huge thing either. Like nobody really makes a big deal about it, right?
Oh, yeah,
and then in the NFL too, like you can just I might have changed with the newest agreement, but in the past it used to be you could just be a team and just if you cut the player, no matter what they made, it's off your books, right? Like that was the difference too. You didn't have any of the stuff that the NHL deals with like LTIR, and the contracts never go away unless a player retires and all that. But I think what's crazy too is like players like Joe Sakic. Like I remember Joe Sakic making $12 million a year when I was a kid. Fedorov, Yzerman making, around those numbers. So it's weird now when you're like, wait, so how many years later, right? I think it was Joe Sakic made just under $100 million in career earnings, the equivalent to just under $140 million roughly, like with inflation, like today, as the equivalent. And you're like, McDavid makes 12.5, right, as the highest hit in the largest overall contract of any NHL player. So I think the players have to do some sort of different negotiation, because the other leagues, we've seen it like every time, I swear, in like MLB, it's like this guy signs this contract and it's the most lucrative in MLB history. And you get one of those at least once every other year.
Yep.
And same with the NFL and same with the NBA.
Trout's what, like $400 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's getting paid a lot a year. Yeah,
what year is Ohtani?
I don't think he's getting paid as much right now.
No, he will. He will on the next one.
He will though.
Like whatever. That's what I mean. Like whatever contract that guy gets is going to.
Then you got, I think Mookie Betts. He's around. I think he's like closer to the 400 mark.
He's 380, right?
Yeah, Garrett Cole's up there.
And that doesn't include their like sponsorship deals. I think like they said, like LeBron, between like all of his stuff between career earnings and sponsorship, he has career earnings of over $1 billion now. I think he became the first, and he's not done in his career.
No, he's not.
He's going to get from the new Space Jam movie too.
Yeah, I know he's going to get the residuals for the next 30 years, right?
Yep.
So it's one of those things.
Get paid from that.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just the NHL is just so far behind on that side of things, and it's a bummer because I think that. Like they're really bad, as we know, at branding players, and they struggle to know what to do with players that actually have some form of like personality, and how to market that. Where like guys in the NBA or NFL, you're just like, oh, they're just like exuberant. Like I think of like Subban, right? Like how the NHL could have embraced him even more than they had years earlier, and then now he's kind of on the back end, and it's like what his career, and you're like, man, you should have been on that way more. And just thinking of others that could easily be that way. I mean, I think of like Matthews is quiet, but he's out with Justin Bieber all the time. Like, there's a lot of options that are on the table for them to do stuff and make this more lucrative, and they don't.
You get Austin Matthews being Austin Matthews is the EA cover athlete again for like the second time in 3 years, which got everyone pissed off.
Yeah, and I know there was a good discussion I saw one time about like, should the players still have to wear suits to the game? Because throughout the bubble, they didn't have that. They wore whatever. They just wore like street clothes. And like you'd see like Marner and Nylander and Matthews and all those guys coming in with like all like the whole designer clothes kind of outfit kind of thing. I think McAfee's the one time had like a bright pink bucket hat or something like that, but that was one thing. Like, should they have it? Should they not? And I remember looking through the comments. There were so many people that were like, no, like strictly suits. Like, and some people were kind of like, what the hell? Like, why would you even ask this? So I don't know. I do agree with Tyson though. I think there's a lot of things where like they don't like. That's where the NHL struggles.
Yeah,
is they don't promote the game the way they should. And I think another problem is that what you just said with NHL, NHL 22 is that game has been not the greatest since probably NHL 19. 15 was great. I'll say that. 15 was fantastic. When they went from 14, that was one of the best games. And then they went into the new gen, and it was really good. 16, 17 were terrible. They were like a carbon copy of the last one. I didn't really think there was much. 18 was cool because they had like the new deeks and everything. Those have still been in the game. 19 was all right. 20 was different. Good.
And now you're transitioning into another next generation of consoles again.
Yeah.
So where is this
now it's powered by Frostbite, so that's different. The graphics, I know everybody is like saying it looks like NHL 14 or NHL 2K10. I don't have a problem with that because, in my opinion, those two games were one of the best NHL games I've ever played in my life. Especially 14. 12, 13, and 14 are like three of my favorite NHLs. And then go into like just the graphics. They look a lot better. I know the animations, they changed a lot of that stuff. I don't know if you guys play the game a lot. I play it literally every day. But yeah, I mean, it's one thing that I've liked, because the problem with it is that I've talked about this with Yuri Wallach, who has like a whole video game podcast. He's the co-founder of Flyers and Gritty. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this at some point, but he said that, and I learned about this through him, that he said like EA only gives them a certain amount of money to spend on that game because it is the least bought game out of the whole EA. Like, why do you think FIFA has every little nook and cranny? Because FIFA sells the most copies and they make the most money from FIFA. That's why FIFA has been a good game for like the past 4, 5, 6 years, because they've put, so, you know what I mean, they're able to put a lot of money into it. The NHL they don't have a certain budget with that with NHL, so there's really only so much they can do. But then again, it's like some stuff just doesn't really make much sense. Like, I think if you go on any game and you go to play, like, let's say you just want to play as like two AHL teams, you play in legitimately the exact same arena in every single one. Like, there's no different, you know what I mean? It's like the same arena foundation, all that stuff. So I'd like for some of that stuff to be changed, but then again, there's so much wrong with the gameplay itself that I have to start with the gameplay before I can get into the other stuff. You know what I mean?
And
so
that's a whole podcast as well.
I need to start
better this year. Yeah, if the gameplay's better this year, I'm fine with it.
Well, there's a lot of I mean, that's a part of it too. Is I play way too much NHL 2021 and every year, and I spend every year I probably spend, I don't know, at least 20 hours making my own like rosters, and like I add every, like the Flyers, I'll take every prospect in Russia and every league NCAA that's not on there, and I make every single one and put those in, and right. But if you play like 2K franchise, it's exponentially frustrating on the NHL side. Like, if you like do an expansion draft stuff, like 2K will be like for NBA, like the last 2K for NBA, they're like, hey, you can do like 10 expansion teams at the same time, and then it's open sourced, so anyone can like create a team and a logo and a arena. And so like, oh, you want to be the Supersonics? Like, someone already made that, and you don't have to spend like 5 hours making everything right. You just click on it. Oh, someone added like all the draft rosters. Here's open source. You can download it. So there's a lot of stuff like that there just seems to be less competition, I think, in the NHL sphere. I've been enjoying the summer guys going through on YouTube, like Nasher and others, playing like NHL hits, which I used to love. And like, there was like Blades of Steel. There was one game I played as a kid on PlayStation where you could stomp on people with your skates in a fight.
Oh, God.
Nothing would happen, but like, it'd be really funny. You could just like knock a guy over and just stomp on him with your skates, and not get a penalty. But those are things that used to kind of be there, and they're just not. NHL power play, they're just not there anymore.
I wish they still had like what was it? Like I wish the KHL was in the game too, because there's so many guys like I'll be like, oh, like the other day I went to try to do something and then see what the one guy's ratings was for a prospect that it was David Kasha. I went to try to play with Kasha like in free skate, and he signed in the KHL. And I'm looking for, I'm like, the KHL isn't in this. I'm like, that's I would love for them to add that if they did. And one thing would be cool. You know how in 2K you used to be able to play. You might still be able to. I haven't played 2K in like 4 years, but the last 2K I had, which was 2016, I think. Yeah. You could go and you play with the legend teams from different years.
Yeah,
like you could play like the 97 Bulls or like the 2001 Sixers or like the 2015 Golden State Warriors were put into it. I wish they would do that in NHL. Like you could go and you could play like the 74, 75 Flyers or like the
I guess technically they did that when they had like all the all-time Flyers roster, the all-time NHL rosters and all that.
They did, but like it's like the alumni stuff and like what I hate about it too is like the lines are just like
weird.
Somebody like they're definitely like somebody just makes them like they don't like it's like computer generated lines. There's absolutely no way the guys who make that game sit there and oh yeah, I'm gonna put Drew. Like some of them are just so crazy because they would have like Hayes would be fourth line center, or like Patrick would be like above the Hayes. I'm like, dude, there's just no way.
And like they have like certain like they don't even have like the Legion of Doom line. Like they don't have Renberg. They don't have
Renberg isn't in the game. Yeah,
I know. It's like if you're trying to go for like these all-time alumni rosters, like pick the better players.
Right. And some of those teams that are on there, like the East and the West, some of the guys in their career were more like remembered for being with the team in the East, like Messier, for example. They had him on the West for the Oilers, right? Well, if I think of Mark Messier, it might just be because I'm young, but when I think of Messier, I think of him with the Rangers. That's just me. But I don't know if you guys feel the same way, because I know you guys are older, and Tyson, I know you're older too. But I don't know. I mean, that's just another thing. And what I don't understand is like the game. It's just so like robotish, if that even makes sense. Like everything about it. I think the new graphics are going to help and the new animations. But I feel like they said that there's been new animations in the last 3-4 games, and really it's felt like it's the same. So.
Yeah. I know we can talking about EA Sports and NHL is. You already did. I'm gonna wait and see how it looks, and if it's good, I might get it. I'm not gonna spend the $79.99. The
one last thing I will say is that there was like a 5-minute trailer that came out, and there's like 34 seconds of actual gameplay in it. Everything else is just like pictures and screenshots and all that stuff.
Classic EA Sports. It's in the game. That's all. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait to see if there's any good reviews, or if the YouTubers I watch, if they like the game. I'm just like, I'm not gonna spend that much money on a game that I'm probably gonna play for 2 minutes, and then if I don't like it, I stop playing it where I can't get a refund. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end it off, and I think that's where we're gonna end it off on the podcast, because we're over an hour, almost an hour and 15 at this point. So it's not a good time as any to end it off. So I'd like to thank Tyson for joining us for the first time in a while. Been a good time since we talked to each other, and I think since definitely we're getting closer towards the season starting, we're getting more consistent with the podcast. Maybe try to do one every week as we get closer and closer towards the regular season, especially when we get closer towards training camp, preseason, and all that. So definitely stay tuned with us for there.
Yeah, and then obviously, as everybody knows, me and Amedeo, we do pretty much one after every game. So we'll be doing that more consistently as the season starts, and we'll be doing preseason and training camp and development camp and all that stuff. So just stay tuned, because we're going to be having a lot coming. So
yeah. So just definitely stay tuned. Don't forget about us.
I know you're our third season with the Fired Up podcast. It's going to be fun.
Yes, it is. Hopefully the team doesn't make us into a nightmare.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Because Chuck Fletcher has stated he has had nightmares about last season. So we're going to leave that off there. So thank you everyone for tuning into this edition of the Fired Up Podcast. If you didn't tune into it live, you can see it on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast at. And also don't forget to subscribe to the different various YouTube channels that we're broadcasting on. The Painted Lines, definitely go check them out wherever you're at. For Flyers Fan Media 93, for Chris, you can go subscribe to him there. For me, it's TTP Sports on YouTube. Definitely go subscribe there, specifically all our different Twitter accounts and everything like that. Don't forget to check us all out. Everything is in the description below. So thank you, everyone, for watching this edition of the Florida Podcast. I'm your host, Amedeo Grassia. That is Chris Maher. That is Tyson Quibel. And we will see you next time.